Hey folks, welcome back to Tent Outdoors. My name's Alan from season 10 of Alone. Today's video, I'm going to do my review of a 2021 Tenere 700. Stick around, it's happening right now. Just a reminder, on June 13th, season 11 of Alone is coming out on the History Channel, and I will be doing recaps of each episode. I would really appreciate it if you guys could hit that subscribe button. The Yamaha T7, it's a mid-weight adventure bike that doesn't have a lot of electronic technology that quite a few other bikes in this class have. It doesn't have 30 traction control settings for every possible type of environment you're riding in. It has none. The only traction control this bike has is your clutch and your throttle. And that's the way I like it. I think that's the way a lot of people like it. Less to go wrong. That's kind of my philosophy on that. When I'm out in the middle of nowhere, I want less to worry about. The new models do have a few upgrades, small upgrades. Number one is the display. The new model has what's called a TFT display, which stands for thin film transistor. And all that means is each pixel is individually illuminated, so it gives you a much crisper, clearer, colorful display than this black and white one. The new bikes also have ABS. This one has one ABS setting. It's simply a button in the dash right here. You simply turn it on or you turn it off. And you do have to stop to turn it on and off, which is kind of annoying sometimes. But the new one, it has 3 different settings. It also has LED signal lights. I'm 53 now, and there's only been a few short stints throughout my life where I haven't owned motorcycles. I've owned a ton of dirt bikes. I've owned a ton of street bikes. And of all the bikes I've owned, this bike is my favorite. Close second, my old 1981 CB750. God, I love that bike. So I've had this bike in all sorts of terrains. I've sampled it pretty much everywhere. I've been on long multi-day rides. I just got back from Wyoming, which was about 1,800 miles on this bike. Through all types of weather conditions. I've had it on single track. I've had it on shale, lots of miles on gravel forestry roads. Fishing trips, camping, and it does it all extremely well. So the T7 has 72 horsepower and 50 pounds of torque. Now if you want to compare it to a DR650 or a KLR 650, they both have around 35 horsepower. And the bike that I had previously to this one was a souped up DR650. And I'm just saying, they're completely different animals. Nothing against the DR650, I love that bike, but the T7 outperforms it in, well, pretty much every area, except for one, which is the price. Folks, this bike does nothing incredibly, but it does everything pretty darn well. If I'm going on a multi-day road trip through rainy conditions, would I rather have a gold wing? Yes. If I'm hitting the trails and dirt, would I rather have a 450 or a KTM 300? Yes. But this bike can do all those things, just not quite as well. I just got back from a trip down to Wyoming, visiting the other cast members of Alone Season 10. I made a video about that. I'll put the link in the description. And the speed limits in Idaho are like 80 miles an hour. And that's like, I don't know, 130 clicks or something. So I was cruising at 80 miles an hour for long periods of time, no problem. On my ride down to Wyoming, I really noticed that the front of the bike and the fairing does a fairly good job protecting you from the wind and the rain. There's a nice little cockpit of protection here. Your legs kind of sneak behind this big gas tank and these large plastic fairings, and you can snuggle in here really well and be quite protected. So one of the first things I did when I purchased this bike in 2020 is I got rid of the stock springs and the forks and then the rear shock, and I bought springs that matched my weight with all my gear on. And I do that for all my bikes, and I want my bike to work properly when I'm riding it. Some other modifications I did, I got rid of the plasticky, flip-floppy handguards, and I bought real metal handguards. Because as you can see, the stock handguards aren't going to protect you or your bike very well. Now another thing I did right after I bought the bike, I got rid of the tin can, which is supposed to be the skid plate, which is very thin and tinny. Get rid of that too. So I replaced it with a much more robust skid plate made by Camel ADV. And what I really like about it is how it protects the rear linkage. It's got a nice little thing under here. I also purchased some plastic engine protectors. They just kind of bolt on your engine if you're going to dump it or scrape it. I mean, they're cheap. And I'd much rather replace these than replace my engine covers. And these ones are made by RNG. I also installed some crash guards from SW Motec. I just kind of like the look at them, and I found them fairly easily here in Canada. I also got rid of the Starship Enterprise, which is the rear signal and brake light assembly with these great big monstrous things. And I replaced it with something called a tail tidy, and it really cleaned up the look of it. Not only does the tail tidy look a lot better, but it also prevents these things from popping out, because on really rough, bumpy roads like cobblestone at high speed, these pop out and hang, and you have to keep popping them back in. Get rid of this too. I also replaced the stock turn signals with some smaller, really bright LEDs. Get rid of these too. So I got rid of the stock tires fairly quickly. They weren't totally burned out before I replaced them, because I like to do a lot of off-road. And I replaced them with the Motoz Tractionator Adventure. And I've been very happy with it actually. I replaced the front tire with the TKC 80. Now because I'm a taller human, I'm about 6'2", I did have to get a fairing extender, because without it, it just hits me right on the top of my helmet. So kind of another nifty little mod I did, and I recommend you guys doing it if you buy a new bike and want to keep your plastics. I put strips of gymnasium floor tape right here to protect it from my saddlebags, and I also put it on the back piece of plastic here as well, because when I travel I have a big duffel bag strapped down on here, and I didn't want to wear away my nice plastic. So if I am going to sell this bike one day, I simply peel off this floor tape and it's going to look absolutely brand new. Now there is kind of a well-known issue with this bike, but it's easy to fix if you want to fix it, but I wanted to make you aware of it, so if you do drop it, it doesn't happen to you. So this exhaust system here, if you are to drop the bike on this side, you might bend your exhaust system and you might not realize it, and you just pick up your bike and you continue riding. But if it's bent in too far, you'll see that there's about 3/4 of an inch between the inside of the exhaust and your swing arm here. So what's happened to some is they've crashed and they didn't realize that the swing arm was rubbing on the exhaust, and as they're riding, they wear down a great big groove into their swing arm, and that can be a really expensive fix. Now, there are some companies that make a high exhaust to avoid this problem. So the other small issue I have with this bike, and it's not really an issue, I'm just kind of cautious, is when I run into deep, muddy ruts. It's probably not a fair comparison because I've ridden a lot of dirt bikes in my life. This can be a little bit tricky. You can lose your front end fairly easily, so you really have to be careful, keep your weight back, keep the throttle on, and it's probably just because I'm doing something wrong. But it is a really high performer in the dirt for a mid-weight adventure bike. I absolutely love this bike, and coming off of dirt bikes, I feel like I'm just on a big, heavy dirt bike. Don't get yourself into trouble, because it's a big, heavy 450-pound bike. Like if you get in trouble on a side hill or on a really rocky hill or something nasty, you're gonna realize that you're not on a dirt bike and you're on a heavy adventure bike. So ride within your own limitations, but you'll be amazed what you can make this bike do. In my opinion, of course, I believe that the T7 is as close to the unicorn as you're gonna find. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. My name's Al. This is Tent Outdoors. We'll see you next time.